Hey, everybody.
Hey, sorry, we're doing the kind of like looking down at us kind of look here.
Yep.
Changed it up. So I don't know about you guys, but it's been a long week, so we're actually kind of like having a seat today,
Hmm.
and taking it easy, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. So let's see here. What we got coming on here? Anyways, sorry. Before I go jumping into looking, because easy distracted. See, it's Friday. I'm already going. Hey, hey. So anyways, as you guys are jumping on here, as always, let us know where you're watching from, and what projects you guys got coming up. I mean, it's almost Christmas is going to be
Yeah.
here way too fast. So what are you hoping that Santa brings you for Christmas? So so make sure you drop that in the comments, and we'll jump on that. We had got a bunch of good questions coming in from the Facebook group. As always, if you're not on part of that group, make sure you are. And it's a great group of guys over there. AJ and I are on there as well, answering all your questions and tech stuff and
Amen.
randomness.
Yeah, randomness.
There's not too much randomness, but it's not bad. So let's see what we got here. All right. There are those long-legged house spiders inside a couple of my amps. Watch out for spiders when you go inside the amp. Yes, yes. I've had a couple repairs that I've done this past year, definitely. That it's one of those. I'm like, you got to go reach back there to put that nut all the way in the back, and you're like,
Yeah, be careful.
and you feel just something taking your hand, like
Yeah. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. I had it was a PV keyboard amp or bass amp that somebody brought me, and something was with the amp. But in order to get the amp out, you have to unplug it from the speakers. Well, there's a gap at the bottom. I'm like, there's some spiderwebs in it. I open up, take the speaker out. I was like, it was like, what was my arachnophobia or something like that? It was like
just
opening up. I was like, okay. So yeah, that was not fun. So yes, a good point there on the spiders and the amps for sure.
Mhm.
So
And rodents. There'll be some dead rodents in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or fried crispy bugs.
Yeah.
I've seen those.
Yep.
Actually, I had a PV that I cracked it open. I was like, "What in the world?" And it was a bug of some sort that had laid across the power supply and was just. I was like, he got a little charred.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh, my goodness.
anyways, let's see here. All right.
Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving as well.
Oh yeah,
They haven't been on here since Thanksgiving, so.
Yeah, we had take kind of a little bit of a break, holidays coming up, and obviously with all the different sales that are going on and everything else, we were just like go,
Yeah.
So it was one of those we didn't want to come on here and be like rush, and like coming at you going, I think I know how to think.
Yeah.
How do I use this again?
Yeah, it's a mind frying time right now for retail and
yes, definitely
everything else. So
let's see here what we got here. So I just bought a Dean Thoroughbred X yesterday. I had it shipped overnight to my house today. It needed nothing more than a regular setup. There you go.
Cool.
Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm hoping not that I'm well. There's an Epiphone Les Paul that just got released. It's one of Billy Joe Armstrong's. Is a junior with a P90, and it's got the big 50s neck on it. I'm just like, please take my money. Here.
Yeah, really.
I'm already on the waiting list at Sweetwater. Anyway, I digress. But that's cool. Let's see here. What we got here? Still by Gibson. Plus, they're having problems with lawsuit. Dime bag. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going down. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that going on with that. Obviously, that a lot of us we only know one side of the story. There could be other things that we really don't know. So it's kind of like I tried to stay out of it, to be honest. That's just me.
Yep.
But anyways, let's see here. Jump over to questions, and also as you guys are watching and everything, if you have questions, by all means, drop them in there. We'll answer as best as we can. Trying to think if we have any updates as far as around here.
No, still parts issues.
Yeah. Mainly
parts
just
of.
transformers, really.
Yeah, mainly transformers. Again, we're trying to get caught up, but it's been real sporadic shipments, and we started working with another company as well to kind of fill in the gaps here in the States. Fortunately, of course, we're not going to go with Chinese stuff, so found a really good supplier and be working with them for some of the more popular like the Mojo 756 and the 752, and I think it might be one or two more, but from what we've seen, I mean, the quality is incredible. They're fantastic. They're right in line with Habor, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, it's been again, we get a lot of these parts from smaller vendors and smaller, mom and pop shops here in North Carolina, of course, across the country. We always do it, try to get what we can from here in the country first. And unfortunately, they're having hard times with, either staffing or parts to make other things that we need, and just it's been a nightmare. But I see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's there. Yeah. Hopefully, it's not a train. But yeah, it's going to be a while, but it's going to come back around. Probably the next 6 months, we'll probably be back to, I wouldn't say normal, but pre-COVID conditions, maybe.
More, less frantic, less everything. How about that?
More stable.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Let's see here. What we got up here? We've got. So the best stuff I bought lately out of many is Les Paul Modern, sparkling blue burgundy. Ooh, nice. 21 Les Paul Studio I got earlier. So yeah, I've got a, not to jump off, but I've got a was it Jared James Nichols. It's the Old Glory, so it's the black Les Paul with a single P90, big chunky neck. I love that guitar, man. Yeah, I brought it here, and I've got our
it's awesome.
I've got our hum canceling P90, the Quiet Cool P90 in it, and it's nice.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's a little different for me going from humbuckers to it, because it's more jangly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have quite that aggressiveness in the lower mids like the humbuckers do, but it's definitely a fun guitar to play for sure.
Beautiful guitar.
So
I love those. I just love stripped down guitars.
Yeah,
like just meat and potatoes guitars that sound incredible. I'd take that over a beautiful PRS any day.
Oh yeah.
I still want PRS, but
well, yeah.
But no, I mean,
don't get me wrong. PRSs are definitely great guitars, but they're really pretty. I'm just afraid to scratch.
I wouldn't.
I want one that I can go, if I go play a show.
Yeah.
I get a scratch. I'm like, that sucks, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus like PRS, you go. So, anyways, let's see here. What do we got here? Let's see. Why 90 degrees instead of slanted front so the speaker would face the player? Why 90 degrees instead of slanted front?
Are you, is this in reference to a extension cabinet?
Oh, as far as I guess maybe like why this way versus angled up. I'm thinking. I think that's what you meant there. Well, I mean, that's kind of how they kind of did it back then. Was kind of facing forward. Of course, you think about it, back then they didn't have the PAs we have. So you're on a stage that's elevated, so the sound is going forward and kind of hitting the people that are in like the front row.
Yeah, exactly.
It was less of to the player, more as an amplification, I would think.
Yeah, keep in mind too that the blackface is the vintage ones, and of course the Marshall 4x12s. The blackface were slanted.
It's what 2-3 degrees.
Yeah, it's.
I don't remember what the degree is.
I know the chassis is 65, but I don't remember what the baffle was. But if you happen to notice all the combos, like the deluxe reverb and the super reverb, twin reverb, they are slanted slightly. But when you're talking about a Marshall, it's again, it was thought of for stage use, and the upper part. The way they did it was they wanted to fill out a room, and if you're projecting all four, drivers in the same direction, the people in the front row are just going to get their ears blasted out. So they took, the slant on top.
Yeah, kind of do a spread.
Yeah,
kind of like a what do they call it? The PA speakers.
The panel array?
No, dadgummit. See, it's Friday and I can't think today. Line array, that's it. Line array.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it fills out the room.
Yeah.
And it's also a, hardly any bands use monitors anymore. They're all in-ears, but you can actually use one of those cabinets if you're near it as a monitor because it's blasting right in your face.
Oh, yeah.
So
I kind of like the sound of monitor blasting me in the face. I miss that. I don't like quiet stages. It's
Yeah.
not fun.
And-
But if you are looking, if you're needing a cab to kind of hit you in the back of the head a little bit as far as sound, we have the Slammons cabinets. Basically, what that is there is like if you take a 4x12, loft off the top, and angle it back just a little bit more, so it can be down behind you and it's coming up and hitting you kind of in your back, not so much up here, depending on how far back it is away from you. But sound guys love it. Because one, they're not having to mix a sound that's coming out along with the PA.
Right.
It's going up and kind of going into the rafters a little bit. So yeah, that was something that we produce here for sure. So I hope that answers your question there. Let's see here. 2 mega guitars had the Mojo Solderless wiring system, G400 SG, Firefly Elite. Awesome, sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, those have definitely been a hot seller. Is the solderless stuff for sure. And I remember when Dave was working on all that, just kind of like, you just go click, done.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're still developing. We're getting more and more models that are probably going to be coming out after the new year. So
yep.
If we don't have it yet, we will.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's been hugely successful for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we've got like what, 1 or 2 people that's all they pretty much do. It's just crank out harnesses, man. So, but
yeah, they do.
We're moving. Like I know, like people ask about as far as pickup lead time and wiring harnesses and all that kind of stuff there, but they're cranking them out as absolutely quick as we can, but also keeping the quality as well. That's the big thing. So let's see here. We had a couple of you guys ask some questions over here on our Facebook group. Let's see here. Somebody was asking as far as good practice for safely discharging capacitors.
Like your fingers, stick it right in the
like this. No, kidding.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
We kid. It's okay. We can laugh. No, the one thing that's one thing you don't want to do. The other thing you don't want to do, and granted, a lot of your older techs would be just like, "Hey, just take a screwdriver and."
Yeah.
I would not suggest doing that.
Yeah, it wreaks havoc on your caps, especially if it's a vintage amp.
Yeah,
you don't want to do that.
especially the older ones, man. They rather than discharge, they tend to go pop.
Yeah, they will. They'll arc across internally and explode like a firecracker, basically, if you do that.
Yeah, like especially the old ones that were on the fenders, they were basically cardboard tubing.
Yeah, they were.
It's basically a firecracker. It's all it is.
Yeah, they look like little sticks of dynamite.
Exactly.
Firecrackers.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. In some of the fenders, like your higher powered ones, like 40 watts and up, they have bleeder resistors on the first stage. So when you shut it down, your first stage and cut the standby off, first stage will drain going through those 2 resistors. But a lot of times you'll leave the other caps unhooked. So what you can actually do is after you cut power, go ahead and turn the standby switch back on, and that reconnects everything downstream to drain through those, they call them totem pole resistors. So that's a quick and easy one there.
And Tweeds did the same thing.
Yeah.
All the Tweeds. We've been over this in the class to where you actually will put the meter on and watch it. And I don't know if they did it, if they actually planned to do this or not, but it was whatever they did, it was a really good invention. But you put your meter on it, you'll see 350 V plus whatever. Second you turn it off, it drops right off. So again, I don't know if they planned it that way, but it works really well. So.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of times you can drain them off really, really quite easily. That cut the power but keep playing because your filaments are still warm and glowing, so they are technically still working. And that's why you hear a lot of times you hear it kind of fade out a little bit. That's the current, the filament's still hot, so it's pulling whatever's left in those caps off. That'll get you down most of the time into a safe realm. Always check with the meter before you jump into there, because there are some that they break the connection, but they'll still hold a good charge.
And Marshalls are known for that.
Oh yeah.
There's also a little shortcut you can take too, and some of the Tweeds and Blackface and some of the Marshall stuff. You can they use on the first gain stage. They'll either use 82K or 100K plate resistors. If you go to the top of the junction of those plate resistors and you actually use a jumper from there to the chassis, it won't arc. Or excuse me, from the bottom of the 100K where the tube is. Sorry.
Pin one.
Yeah, pin 1 or pin 6
Mhm.
directly to the chassis, and it won't spark, but it drains everything down at that point. If you've ever seen the, I like to call them safety pins, but they're just modified plastic tubes that, or sticks that you have two 20K resistors on, and you can use that. It has an alligator clip, and you can go around at certain points. If anybody has any questions about that, I actually did an article about that and how to actually make it. So it's very simple. It's 50 cents in parts, and we use them here all the time.
So yeah, you've got a couple on your desk in there that you use.
But don't ever assume, even if that amp has been on the shelf for 10 years, don't ever assume that thing is drained off. Because it only takes one time, especially with a bigger Marshall. There's so much current. If you're running 300 volts, even that will knock on your butt pretty good.
Oh yeah. And like you mentioned there, the Marshalls, a lot of them use 50 UF caps versus the Fenders that were using like 16 and 22. So you've got a bigger capacity to hold that voltage. And like it was mentioned, as far as leaving it sitting there for a while, I've had a nice, I think it was a record player preamp that somebody brought. Had changed up caps or whatever else, tested it, whatever, set it off the side. 2 days later, came back to it, was moving and got bit. Daggum thing was holding 250 volts over the course of days. Yeah. So, yeah, always be careful. Always measure before you go back into there, too.
Yeah, definitely. So,
it's one of those like, what the heck, So.
Yeah, they'll sneak up on you when you least expect it.
Yeah. So, let's see here. What was another question here? They're asking about like voltages in the amps, like for like the different kits and stuff, as far as what to expect for voltages when there's tubes running and when there's not any tubes running. I don't know that there's an actual. There's not really a necessary rule to it per se. It's like, oh, you should expect 20% or whatever else. Some of those you definitely need to be careful of not running tubes in because you'll actually go past the voltage rating. I have seen, depending on the 5Y3 and the rest of the tubes, I've seen a deluxe easily surpass 500 volts within a couple seconds. And most of those capacitors are generally rated at 475, so you're already well past it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, once everything else starts coming online, that voltage quickly drops back down. But there's that time frame where it's past its 10 to 20% tolerance.
Right.
So in some things, you definitely want to make sure that you have some kind of tube or load or something like that on the power supply. Always check voltage rating on your capacitors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're talking filter caps, not coupling caps. So
yeah. They when you look at our transformer sheets online, those are what we consider loaded voltages. That means that's the voltage it's going to give you under that particular model's working load, actually running. What Steve was saying about the current can jump, it's inrush current, and it's horrible on GZ34s and silicon diodes. It was a couple of weeks ago. I actually had a cap explode on me because this time of the year, a lot of industrial areas and cities will boost the voltage a little bit because it's a hard thing to boost current, but they can actually add more voltage to your outlet. It could get as high as 127 volts, 130 volts even, I've heard. Of course, I don't know if that's true or not, but you wouldn't think, only being 7 volts is, 127 versus 120, it would do anything bad. But when you start talking about turn ratios and reflected multiplied voltages and things like that, all of a sudden your 350, volts B plus could be well over 500, 550 volts, and with the inrush current, you could be pushing 600 volts for
Yeah.
half a second. That's what happened in this case when that happened. Didn't even think about looking at the voltage before I plugged it in. I should have been using a variac.
Yeah.
But it was one that we had run before, and it was sitting on the shelf, so I was trying to take some readings on it, plug it in, and go turn it on. Sure enough, it blew that first filter cap. So yeah, got to be careful with that. Definitely.
Is that that was the one that shot the stuff up into the?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It actually hit me in the face.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I was wearing glasses, because I was reaching over at that time when I plugged it in, and I flipped it on, and the whole thing just blew straight up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
whenever you fade, it has one of the lights with the magnifying glass. It was all over that.
Yeah, it went up and that.
I was like, holy cow, what happened?
It sounded like a gunshot going on. It was pretty scary, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, that's just one of those things. But if you take the necessary precautions, it'll be fine.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, like for myself, I've got a variac that a lot of times, especially on new builds, first putting voltage to the caps, I like to kind of ease into them rather than just kind of shock them. So a lot of times I bring it up real slow on a variac, but I mean, on the rare chance there is the possibility of a cap being faulty, and it will still pop, but it's extremely rare. A lot of times, if you hear it kind of going crack or a little popping, whatever,
creaking.
Creaking. That's the word.
It'll creak.
It's this kind of eerie, like.
Yeah.
I'm like,
turn off. Yeah.
Off. Okay. Disconnect the voltage. Yeah.
Don't even play with it.
Yeah, it's one of those. If you hear that and you haven't got anywhere near operating voltage, cut it off.
Yeah.
Swap it out.
Yeah.
Again, it's very rare, but it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of modern production stuff nowadays is really done a good job at getting that down, and size too. Holy cow!
Yeah, it's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let's see here. Jumping here on this guy. Hey, told a story when he was working. Especially first got it, cut a screwdriver with a capacitor and blew him against the wall. I wouldn't put that past him. he was Eddie was one definitely for tinkering. Look at it. I mean, be it guitars, be it amps, and running it on a variac, and I mean, but that's where that's how he developed his sound, and his thing was just kind of like, hey, what happens when I do this? Oh, I shouldn't do that. But I'm also the same one too. I was like, because I don't know a lot of, we'll call it the rules of making everything in linear and all that kind of stuff here. So I'm not afraid to kind of get in there and go, hey, what happens when I start messing with this and push a little farther?
Yeah.
Has it come back to bite me? Once or twice. But we've all been there. So let's see here. Steve says, I just finished up a Mojo 850 watt. All went well, but the plate voltage is 401 when the current is showing 440, bias at 70 higher. Current worried my power transformer has an issue. That is lower. It's not terrible. The other thing, like he was mentioning here, would be wall voltage. Because like, what was it? Started talking turn ratios. If you take 120 in and you're pushing, let's say 300 on the other side of it, and you go from 120 to 125, it's only 5 volts difference here. But times that ratio could easily be, 40 volts easy.
Yeah, easy.
So,
and it works the other way as well, like he was
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
So if you're down, your voltage will be down.
Yep. But something also to take into consideration as far as the output tubes too. Those, if it's a higher current, they're going to pull them more. We'll say higher current at idle. Not necessarily saying bias, but as far as like if a tube, like tend to draw a little bit more juice, even at whatever. Sorry, it's Friday. I can
yeah,
words is hard.
It's been a long
I need the JHS thing goes. Words is hard. So, love that show, by the way. But a lot of times, if you have to, like, especially what was the SED tubes, those things used to be really big current hogs.
Yeah.
So what you do, you have a tube that's pulling a little more current. In other ways, it tends to pull the voltage down because it's a ratio kind of thing. Higher current, lower voltage. Lower lower current, higher voltage. And you can actually watch as you adjust your bias. If you watch the B plus voltage, say on the first node, and you start turning the bias up to say 80, 85%, you'll see that voltage go down.
Yeah.
And then as you start, if you run the bias colder, like say 50%, you'll see that voltage go up. So it's almost a moving target sometimes. The thing that I would definitely check on that is go ahead and run it. If it's not blowing any fuses, cool. Keep an eye on the heat of the transformer. If it gets say just a little warm to the touch after running for say 10, 15 minutes, I wouldn't sweat it.
Yeah.
Now, if it goes from warm to touch to you can't touch it and it's burning you, that's a problem. The power transformer shouldn't ever really get screaming hot. You should not be able to cook an egg on it. Right. That's a problem. So let's see here. Oh, use my Variac dialing exactly 120. Okay. Yeah. Chances are when we test around here, we're probably seeing 124, 125 sometimes. That's about the average here as far as our wall voltages. So
one thing I would do in a case like this to check just to make sure if your transformer's okay is basically either do one of two things: pull all your tubes out and check your high voltage secondaries, or disconnect the transformer from the circuit itself and then check your high voltage secondaries. They should be a little over what is listed for that particular transformer. And that will tell you basically if the circuit is drawing power down or if the issue with the transformer. Usually it very rarely will be the transformer, because usually when they start drawing a lot of current, you'll smell it before you before you feel it. And it will usually blow a fuse. So because you haven't blown a fuse, and if it is a high current situation that you have there, and of course there's some other things at play, I would tend to lean towards the secondary side of the transformer, not the primary. But in that case as well, you'd also blow your B plus fuse. Yeah. If you had issues there. So there could be some things at play here, and it might just be fine. I mean, it depends. So, every amp's going to vary a little bit. So you don't know.
And it's one of those, like, the other thing for my question, after you got dialed in on the voltages and everything else and played it, how's it sound? If it sounds great, leave it. That's kind of the thing with tubes is not all of them are going to pull the same current. They're not all going to pull the same voltages, that kind of stuff there. That's why, as far as we try to match the output tubes so that both of them pull the same current, that kind of thing there. And again, like I said, it's kind of like a moving target. If any of you ever trying to mess with like JFETs for pedals and everything else, you could have 10 of them, and you could set it up using the exact same resistors, whatever else. One will bias at 4.5. The next one might bias at 2 volts. The next one will bias at 6.5. Kind of the same thing. So it's a matter they kind of adjust. You have to tweak for it a little bit, but I wouldn't sweat it too much, to be honest. I would just like mention those things there. Just kind of check for that. Just kind of. Yeah. Hope that helps. Let's see. Let me go back to my list of stuff here. Okay, we got the loaded versus unloaded. Someone's asking about why certain types of resistors are selected with our kits: carbon comp versus carbon film versus metal film, oxide, etc. Well, there's a couple different things. Metal oxide and the ceramics are definitely for a higher wattage type setup. They can take the heat. You notice they're also a little bit larger in size. That's typically used in your power supply or in the cathodes on like cathode bias amps like Tweed Deluxe, Champ, Princeton, Tweed Princeton, that is.
3015.
Yeah, 3015.
18 watt.
18 watt, yeah, that kind of stuff there. And those are made to drop higher current resistors.
Yeah.
As far as the other ones, so like say for example, carbon comps, the fenders, that's what they had, that's what they used. So we try to use carbon comps as much as we can in those amps or those kits there. The thing is, right now is carbon comps are getting a little more rare now because nobody's really making them. Obviously, because they can the older ones were was it the term or the name the terminology? Was that
Allen Bradley or the manufacturer? Or
Allen Bradley was really good. There was another one that had they call it roundies or something like that. They were pre Allen Bradley or something like that,
Right.
and they were really notorious about absorbing moisture and would drift a whole lot easier over time. So if you lived in like Florida, they would pull the moisture out of the air, and then all of a sudden your voltage or your resistance drifts and everything.
Right.
So anyways, so for like the fenders, that kind of stuff there, because that's what they were using at the time, we try to use carbon comps in that particular situation. Versus like our Marshall kits, which we switched over probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I think it was.
It's been a while. You're talking about the carbon film.
Yeah, the carbon films. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. But for the longest time, we were selling them with carbon comps, which wasn't right.
Right.
Yeah, Marshall used carbon film, which are a little bit more rigid and not as quite as noisy as what carbon comps are, which Fender used. But Marshall also used, and Vox also used the same type of resistors in the power supply. They were either metal oxide, metal film, and ceramic as well for power dissipation. And touching on what Steve was saying, the reason they use those resistors in those particular circuits in the power supply was A, they were cheap and easy to find. 2, they work really well under a higher heat than what a carbon film or carbon comp would. And you can get them; they're much more stable at higher wattage, like a 5-watt cathode resistor, a 500 ohm cathode resistor. We use in the Champ. Yeah. It can heat up and cool down many times, whereas a carbon comp can't. Yeah. Carbon comps drift all over the place. If you overheat those, they will do some weird things on you. They could actually open. I've never seen one actually short across, but they will open like a fuse. And they do drift a lot, like you were saying. Yeah. Yeah, but the types of resistors in these particular amps, like the Fender, use carbon comp because that's what they had. That's what Lily Fender, he would walk down the street to his friend's Radio Shack or, electronic supply house. That's what he got. He can get a whole handful of them for $1. Carbon films over here, they were here, but they weren't as prevalent as they were in Europe. Now, in Europe, they use carbon films for electronics, radio sets and PAs and things like that. And that's what Jim Marshall used. That's what he had. So, it was a necessity as a mother of
all invention.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what they had to use. So they used it. To hit upon that a little bit, if you happen to look, and most of you are going to know this, some might not, but the original Marshall 50 watt, the JD45 was very similar, or actually a duplicate of the actual 5F6A bassman that Marshall started making. And if you were to look at the old schematic and wiring diagrams for the 45 and for the 5F6A, the real estate, the topography of the actual amp is almost identical. But they're two totally different amps because they were using different resistors in them in different areas. So, again, they used what they had and it became their own thing. So, yeah. Now, when we're talking about resistors, we also need to talk about variable resistors, which are the pots as well. Those were different as well. Marshall would use linear stuff. Fender would only use linear for signal modulation, and the tremolo and some of the reverb circuits. I think might have been. I don't know.
Yeah, it was 100K linears on the reverb.
Right, yeah. Linear. So
which you could, if you ever get your reverb, like say in your blackface kit, whatever, and it's like nothing, a little bit of reverb, and by the time you hit 2, it's like splash. You can always swap it out with a 100K audio taper, and you get a little more smoother.
Right. Yeah. Carbon comp. One other thing about resistors. The one of the owners here, Andy Turner, we were talking about this one day, and he goes, "Well, fixing a lot of these amps that come in, and the ones that we build here, right out of the box, can be kind of noisy." And he had mentioned that carbon comps are in fact noisy. They're just noisy resistors. And there's the right way to build an amp, and then there's the vintage way to build an amp. So, but again, they used what they had, and that's what worked. So there you go.
Yeah, and something for you guys, if you ever get into a situation where you have to where, say, you don't have a carbon comp resistor that you're like, oh my gosh, whatever, you can drop in a carbon film just fine. There's a lot of mystique and a lot of misinformation. It's like, oh no, it sounds better. I'm like, it's a resistor.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not so much a sound; it's more of a feel. A carbon film, in my ears, is very, very close to a carbon comp as far as how it it responds. It's a little bit quiet. It's definitely quieter for sure. And whereas like metal films will be extremely exact, really tight tolerances, whatever, but can be a little, we'll call it stiff, for lack of better words. And it's kind of like, you may like the way this sounds, you may like the way this one sounds. It's kind of like, make it with your own. There's not a right or wrong. So
yep. Exactly.
but yeah, let's see here.
But yeah, metal foams were. We noticed when John was developing the high watt and getting all the Marshall, the British kits switched over to metal film. Not only was it a little bit more, it's like Steve was saying, stiff, but it was to my ear, they were, if you were to make 5 JMPs or 5 800s and compare them all to each other, they're going to be very similar. I mean, they're very consistent, much more consistent, I think, than what carbon comps are.
Yeah.
But you get 5 deluxe reverbs together, they're going to be
they're
a little different.
Each has their own kind of flavor to it.
Yeah, it does.
And it's kind of like where you see people talk about, oh well, this tube screamer from this year is better than this one. It's like, no, it's the sum of the parts. Yep. You have how many different components in a deluxe reverb? I don't even know. A lot. Yeah. So by the time you take your original signal way over here and you amplify it through all these different components, because of the tolerances of everything, there's going to be differences. And the carbon comps tend to be a little bit more flexible, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. 10% carbon comps are becoming very difficult to find. It's going to be 15 and 20%, which we're actually starting to include in some of the kits, but it doesn't mean any difference in tone whatsoever. You'll also notice in some of our kits with a 100K resistor for the fenders.
220s too.
Yeah, 220s as well. We're having a hard time finding those. I had overheard, we had talked about this in a couple of meetings where we're trying to find these, the carbon comps, because Zycon is falling off, Kamaya is falling off. And come to find out, we've been working with inventory that was made possibly 6-7 years ago, and now we're just getting to the end of it. Because with the Mouser, the past couple of years, we haven't seen, very sporadically we'll be able to get 100Ks every now and then, but we're having to supplement that with carbon film, I believe they're carbon film, mil spec, 2% resistors, I think they are, or 1%.
Yeah, they're kind of like a deal in a way.
Yeah, but again, the location that you're using them in for voltage regulation, it doesn't have anything to do with the tone of the amp whatsoever. So there's that.
Yeah. So I hope that answers that question there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here. I don't see anything else as far as questions on anything else. So yeah, but like we mentioned on here, make sure you're part of the Facebook group over there. AJ and I are always on there to kind of answer your questions as best as we can. And
Tech at Mojotone.
Yeah, Tech at Mojotone. You can always email one of us, AJ at Mojotone, Steve at Mojotone. Really complicated emails,
Right.
So we try to make it that way. Yeah. So if you guys ever have questions, whatever, feel free to reach out to us. That's the best way to get in touch with us. I know sometimes we'll get people that call in and say, "Hey, I need to talk with the tech," and it's like we've got so much stuff going on like that. It's a whole lot easier for us to take just a few minutes to type it out real fast versus having to get on there and phone tag or something like that, that kind of thing. So
it's just we don't want to waste your time.
No.
And 90% of the time, when we get a question, if it's on the phone, it's not just one phone call; it's 3 or 4 phone calls. That we have to be tied to a desk to do phone calls, and we do many other things other than tech stuff here and build amps. So we're very rarely at our desk anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So
here we all wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, we do. And any given time, we're juggling 10, 15 emails at the same time. So that you can't do with a phone.
No.
And also, we started doing this a long time ago, to where I used to take phone calls, but I found that because we were taking so many phone calls, I couldn't get organized with the things that were going on with the phones, because I'll have 10 phone calls that I need to call back for particular things that are going on with the amp. And when you're trying to juggle that many things, trying to figure out that many problems, you're going to lose the little nuances of the conversation. So every time we got on the phone, it was almost like Groundhog Day. They'd have to go back over and tell us what was going on, to remind us what was going on. So if we have an email, it helps us because we have a record of what was going on. I can look at that. It gives me a little bit more time to research what's going on and actually give you an educated answer versus guessing.
Oh yeah, and it's a whole lot easier just to kind of jump back and look at the conversation. Okay, we talked about this. It's a reference,
Yeah, and it helps other people, because we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. But when we get these these emails, it's fine that we help you. That's what we're here for. But that one email can help 20 other people. If we are able to record that, I can go back and look and say, yes, this is an ongoing problem with Princeton Reverb or whatever, which we can't do. We can't possibly remember all that stuff with phone calls. So
there's limited capacity up here.
Yeah, right. So
I can only remember so many pieces and parts and what I'm supposed to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess maybe I have any more questions. So I guess we had call it a Friday. So, anyways, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you guys get to build some fun, do some fun stuff. I know there's there's a Christmas parade they're having here, so I may go hit that up tonight and see what else is going on. And I got a few more repairs to do this weekend, so but never a dull moment, let's say that. So, but anyways, I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I don't know, we may try to do one more before Christmas. We'll just kind of see how this goes out. And if there's any questions, by all means, reach out to us, hit us up on the Facebook group. We're always around. So
we're always here.
Yep. So, all right, you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.